All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Today, whenever you're listening to this, we are going back to Colorado. Yeah, we're going back to Colorado because there's some special places for me in this show that just sing whiskey. You can talk, Colorado, obviously, the Pacific Northwest, and then Pennsylvania, stuff like that. There's certain regions, Texas, obviously, me being a Texas boy, but there's certain regions of whiskey where you're just like, that's super interesting. We need to find out more about that, and we're going to find out a lot more about that because I have Alastair with Boulder Spirits, aka Vapor Distilling, however you want to call it. And he was gracious enough to send over a couple samples for us to go over, and we're going to talk everything that they have going on. And I feel like it's going to be an excellent conversation as soon as you hear the man speak. So welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come hang out with me.
Thanks so much, Randall. An absolute pleasure to be on your show. I just saw one of your previous shows, Dubok. Fantastic. Really enjoyed listening to those guys when I've got time. Got two young kids, so time is tough.
Absolutely. I totally understand. I have a daughter who is fixing to graduate high school. So we're doing with all the bits and bobs of getting all the stuff for college and stuff like that. And then I have a 13-year-old boy as well. So I totally understand, and trying to do a podcast and all the other things at work. You got to work sometime in there too. So, it's, I understand. So, I promise we will try and make this short and sweet, but I want to give my listeners the information that I know you have for us. You were gracious enough to send over a book, and it talks about your brand and all of the things, which this is so cool because if I was somebody new getting into your spirit and I didn't really know a whole lot about it, obviously you guys have been in the game for a minute. Most people know who you are, hopefully by this point, but if they don't, they just literally pick up this book and it'll tell you a little bit about everything you have that Boulder Spirits is all about, which to me, it's super cool because I can sit here and rant about it all day, but when you see it on paper, for some reason, people tend to gravitate to it a little bit more. So you sent over 2 samples for us tonight. You sent over your straight bourbon whiskey, which is bottled and bond, and then your American Single Malt, because you know that I love a good American Single Malt. So I am going to dip into the bourbon, if that's okay with you, first. I feel like we'll end the night with the American Single Malt. I will let you guys know I haven't even opened this yet. I'm being a good boy, trying not to open it. But tell us a little bit about this bourbon, because, like I said, in your pamphlet, it has a unique mash bill on it, does it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to start the story, I need to take a step back.
Please.
And really why I did a bourbon. So I came across to the US, and we can delve into that a wee bit later, about 13 years ago. And I wanted to make the very best American single malt whiskey I could. And to be honest, it was going to be a hobby. And we landed in Boulder, Colorado, with my wife and my American wife, that's why I'm here, and 2 very young Scottish-born boys, 1 and 3. And we decided I was going to do this as a bit of a hobby. So I purchased a still from the famed Forsyth of Rothes, who make most of the pot stills for the Scotch whiskey industry. And I wanted to really sort of focus on single malt whiskey, but also do other things as well. And immediately I started making American single malt whiskey. I realized I had to do a bourbon. I was in the land of bourbon, and I wasn't going to change everybody's mind to American single malt whiskey fast enough. So wasn't even a category in those days.
Right.
So I decided to do the bourbon. And like a lot of craft distillers, you want to be a little bit different. And I am no master when it comes to bourbons. I was more of a single malt whiskey guy. So along with the distiller that I had at Vapor Distillery, Boulder Spirits, we decided to do a very unusual mash bill. And it lent towards my single malt palate. And I wanted to do something because American distilleries only really use malted barley because it's very diastatic. It's got a lot of diastatic power. It's very enzymatic. It helps break things down, and maybe 5%. So why go for 6 or 7%? I went to 44%. So 51 corn, 44 malt, and 5% rye for the hell of it. And, and we don't really know at that stage how it's going to develop. We can have a wee taste off the still, and that gives the start of the indications that it's a nice, clean spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But where's it going to go, especially in a new oak barrel?
Right.
So that was the basis of me deciding to do it, being very different, because nowadays not all bourbons are alike. And
no.
Whether we talk about the climate, whether we talk in Colorado, or we talk about the mash bills, or where the grains are sourced, everything is different. So we've got, I'm bottling for high rye bourbons, some private bottling for high rye bourbons, high wheat bourbons, and this is just high malted barley bourbon.
And I love that, because it stays true to your roots, but it's also saying, okay, we have an American palate. They know bourbon in and out. So this is bourbon, but it's also malt adjacent, right? So it's really cool to see. And I'm just now smelling this thing, and you can smell the corn on it. Obviously you get a lot of the barrel influence as well, which is really nice. But then that barley, that bready note from the barley just comes through, and it kind of carries it. And it's really nice, and it's really intriguing that you guys aren't trying to do that 75, 12, 18, the normal, Elijah Craig mash bill or whatever. But it's really cool to see that you guys are just like, hey, we want to be a malt distillery, but we're making bourbon. And I'm sure you have some other spirits, and we'll talk about those as well. But like, to me, it's really cool that you're not pigeon-toed into a specific, and like you're saying, you can do a high wheat or high rye as well. You're not pigeon-toed into one specific mash bill. You're just basically this, and like you were saying earlier, you don't really know until it's in the barrel for a couple of years if this is actually a thing. So dive a little bit deeper into that part of it. Like, okay, the whiskey's been sitting in the barrel for a year. You go and taste it after a year, or do you let it sit for the 4 years before you even think about bottling it or think about even tasting it? Sorry.
Well, it's ever changing because it was so new, having such a high mash bill. And for me, one of my aims was to create a bourbon that was not that heat and sweet you get from high corn bourbons, and bring that sweetness back a little bit, or the corn sweetness back a bit, at another dimension, as in malted barley, and just calm that heat sweetened Kentucky hug you get from high corn. And one of the how can I say it, we didn't know how it was going to turn out as it matured, and that was the complete unknown. And people would have said to me, well, nobody else does this. How's it going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And what we've discovered is that even at the climate in Colorado, we don't bring this bourbon out. Minimum is going to be 4 years. We just got a big batch coming off soon. So we'll keep it for 4 years minimum.
Okay.
And what we found was, as it matures, we were finding it was becoming more complex. And also what we found was people were saying to us, it's sweet, but there's a different type of sweetness. And I said, yes, because a heavy corn sweetness, sweet. It covers up all other sweetnesses.
Right.
Or to a degree. Everybody's got their own take on this. Bring back the corn, you get corn sweetness, but now you're starting to taste a little bit more of the barrel sweetness, the natural sugars that the barrel is going to give it, and it's not being overpowered. And what's happened is our 8-year-old bourbon, it just got better and better and better. In fact, our 8-year-old cask strength, won the World Whiskeys world's best small batch bourbon last year. And so, it's getting better with age. And unfortunately, we've run out of bourbon at 8 years. So it's going to be a while before we're going to catch up, because we've had great demand for it.
Which is what you want, right? You want the demand to be there. Like, obviously you want to have enough stock, but like you're saying, when you're doing something like this with a unique mash bill or whatever, like, you don't want to make 1,000 barrels of it. And what if it's crap? Like, what if you're like, I don't know if it's going to be good. So we'll make a batch, what we would call a batch. And you can say how big that was or not, but like, and just be like, hope that it's good. And then you wait, and then maybe try it in 2 years and you're like, yeah, it's getting there. Maybe make a couple more just in case. But then you always are lagging on the fact that you don't have fully aged stock, enough of it to really create a mass appeal for it. So that's really cool. So the 8-year-old stock is fantastic, but it ran out. So now you're having to dip into the younger stuff. But what would if you had an age range that you would want to put it out at? Obviously you said no less than 4 years, but would the 8 be where you want to put it, would have everything be at?
Well, interestingly, because we brought our first cask strength out at 6 years. So we had a 6, 7, and 8 year. And the 6 year got as much plaudits as the 8 year did. And when you taste them side by side in the cask strength, they are incredibly similar. So that between the 6 and the 8 didn't change a massive amount. And in fact, some people have said, they've been all over the place, prefer the 6 years to the 8 years, prefer the 8 years to the 6 years. So our recent batch is going to come out 4. We won't be releasing a cask strength bourbon this year, but maybe if it's ready at 5.5 strokes coming up 6 years, the following year, then we might do it. So we just have to see.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. You as well as a lot of the other people that I've talked to, you kind of let the whiskey tell you when it's ready, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you do that, you let it fully mature. We were talking off camera, and you were talking about Mark over at Whiskey Del Bach, and how sometimes his whiskey, being that he's in Tucson, right? His whiskey is ready at 18 months. So there's a vast difference between an 18-month whiskey and an 8-year whiskey, right? The cask maturation and all of the things, but you have to understand, and we can talk about terroir. Some people don't think it's a thing, but we can talk about terroir and the differences of climate and stuff like that. And you have to also think about Colorado being a higher elevation as well. Your fermentation temperatures and all of those things, all of that plays to making the distillate, but it also plays in the aging of the spirit and stuff like that as well. So for you, if you had an 18-month-old bourbon coming out, it probably wouldn't taste as good as the one we're drinking tonight.
No. It almost flips. 3 years isn't quite right. 3.5 years is getting there. 4 years is a sort of sweet spot here, certainly for ours in Colorado and for my mash bill. I can't speak for other mash bills, but they're all going to be a little bit different. And also depends on what the climate's been doing this year. I mean, right at the moment, we've got probably our warmest winter. There's literally no skiing here in Colorado. So we've had our warmest winter so far. So things change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're having the warmest winter, and 2 days ago it was 9 degrees in Central Texas. So just understand that. And being from Texas, we don't do cold, right? We do cold, but like we're used to 100+ temperatures in the summer, right? 110, whatever. We can deal with that and high humidity and all the things. But when you get below freezing and you have ice and stuff, no, the entire state shuts down. But anyway, no, it's really cool to see all of that taking place, and that you're just finding that sweet spot and saying, okay, this is where it's the best. Let's not take anything younger than this, and just kind of putting like a foot in the sand or drawing a line and saying, no, we're just not, because it comes to like I don't want to say a morality thing as well, but it also comes to like, this is where it's good. Now, if you were tinkering with another mash bill or something like that, you obviously would try it at different ages. But like with this one, it's like this. And obviously there's wood differences. There's, some of the grains you get could be potentially different each batch that you get. So there is going to be differences, but obviously hitting that one marker where okay, now we can start talking about it. Before then, it's just excess stock in the back room, right?
It is.
and that's what's so cool about whiskey distilling in itself. And when it goes for other, I would say what we call brown spirits, like brandies and cognacs and stuff like that. They're similar, but they're treated differently, right? Because you have to have them in different climates, and they put them in at different proofs in the barrel and stuff like that. But with whiskey especially, you can have 2 barrels sitting right next to each other, same mash bill. They could be off the same still, the same tote, whatever, and they're going to taste vastly different. And that is to me is really cool. And when the clear spirit side by side is undistinguishable from each other. These are so vastly different. And that's what makes exploring whiskey so cool. And that's why I've been able to do as many episodes as I have. And I'm barely breaking the surface, obviously, because we have so many other people to talk to. But it also makes it so cool because, like, your spirit is very much different than, I'm going to toot somebody else, say Law's Whiskey House, right? Or Deer Hammer, right? All three of y'all's whiskey is completely different from each other. Now, obviously, the mash bills are different, and there's different techniques that are used, but it's the same state, right? And it's like, and when people when they talk to me about Texas whiskey, and they're like, "Oh, all Texas whiskey tastes the same," I'm like, "No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't." Yes, you've probably had one or two Texas whiskeys that tasted similar, yes, but not all taste the same. And I'm seeing that, and especially with this high malt mash bill, it is really, obviously, I'm a huge American Single Malt fan. I have a whole nother podcast totally devoted to that. So, like, just understand that. But 3 Guys, 1 Grain, go follow. No, but it's super cool to see the malt sweetness and the breadiness of the malt kind of holding hands, I'll say, with the corn sweetness as well, just giving it a very rich mouthfeel and flavor, and it's very coating. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you right off the bat, what type, now you said the stills that you're using, are they pot still or column or hybrid?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one single malt whiskey distillery that's using to make the single malts. There's only one distillery that doesn't use a pot still. We use a pot still, and one of the reasons we can use a pot still, and one of the reasons this helps the production in a pot still, is the fact that, as I was saying, the malted barley tends to be very enzymatic. It's able to break everything down. So having such a high mash bill allows us to put malted corn in with the malted rye. So we're able to break it down. You start putting up too much corn or rye, then in the mash, first of all, in the mash, you're going to start clogging things up unless you're putting a lot of enzymes in,
right? Which
we don't really want to do,
right?
So, and we also make what's called Vorloff it. So in the mash tun, we make it clear before no grains at all, before we put it in the fermenter, and then we put it from the fermenter into the still. A lot of distilleries might put the grain in the fermenter and might have a lot of grain still in the still, but we don't do any of that, and that's not really what a traditional sort of Scottish pot still is designed to do.
Right.
So we had to sort of make allowances for those two things, and we do have to add a little bit of enzymes. But the malted barley is such a huge amount, it really breaks things down in the mash.
Right. Because like we said at the beginning, you're trying to stick to your traditions and your heritage. And traditionally, yeah, the Scottish distilleries, they did not put their barley in the still or even in the fermenter. They would make a beer, a distiller's beer, and ferment it from there. And there's a lot of American single malt distilleries that are doing that as well.
Yeah,
I have had some that have distilled through the grain and stuff like that, and you can taste it. Like there's a definite note there, but to me, I think the flavors of distilling off the grain gives it less of that. Oh, and I'm going to say the word, and don't shoot me, guys who are doing that. Right? It's kind of a barnyard funk. Does that make sense? Like a musty grain bed type thing. It kind of gives that. Whereas this is a very clean. Obviously, this has corn in it as well, but this is a very clean spirit, and there's none of that. There's none of that. I wouldn't say it's off-putting, but it's a little grassier or something like that. You get a lot more of the grain, I guess you can say. And obviously, with malt and with malted corn and stuff like that, it does have a different flavor, right? Than your typical yellow dent corn. I'm actually doing a series on this podcast about the different grains that we put into whiskey. And it's really cool to see the history of why they used the said grains. They used them out of necessity and stuff like that. And so the fact that when you grow up using barley and then you're like, hey, I want to make a bourbon, Now you're like, hey, we're going to make a bourbon with a high barley content. That's just what we're going to do. And it shows in the glass. This is unlike any bourbon that I've ever had, but a bourbon I think everybody needs to have. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a bit of a shot in the dark. We didn't know how it was going to come out. A lot of people, just saying, high malted barley, is it going to work? But it stood the test of time now.
Yeah.
And as I said, as a single malt whiskey drinker, I do struggle a little bit with drinking high corn bourbons. For me, because in the UK, where I come from, Scotland, UK, even Europe, doesn't have a lot of. They have a lot of grain whiskies as far as Scotch blends are concerned, has grain whiskey in it. But bourbons are not very popular in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are popular tend to be the sort of how can I say it, the lower priced ones.
Yeah,
because there is a bit of a mentality to the majority, not everybody, that bourbons are a cheap because the corn's cheap. It's a cheaper sort of side of it. In fact, there was a big liquor store in London, and they had a huge selection of Blantons. And I went to the chap. I said, "Wow, you've got some selection of Blantons." I said, "You must get huge allocations." And they said, "Yeah, we get a lot of Blantons, but who we sell them to is primarily American tourists coming over who can't get it in the US, so they buy it in London and then take it back."
Yeah, and that's funny because because anytime you see I know that good friends of the show, Balcones Distilling, they're in Japan and London, and somebody took a picture of their bottle in the Heathrow airport, and stuff like that. And it's really cool to see, especially Texas, American Single Malt and stuff like that, going to places like that. But it's like you're saying with the bourbons over there, it's like, if we're drinking it, we're drinking Jim Beam, not and Jack Daniels. We're not like, and it's either that or they have the Pappy 23, right? There's really no middle ground. You're either getting the most expensive or you're getting what we call the bottom shelf, right? Which is fine if you're going to mix it with a soda or something like that. I totally understand it. For me, I would not mix this whiskey with anything. I prefer it exactly where it is. I think the proof point is perfect. I'm not just saying that because you're sitting across from me. I think that the proof is right. This would be great to just sit around a fire. It's just a great dram altogether, which makes me really intrigued for moving on to the next one. But I do want to ask you a couple more questions before we move on to the American Single Malt. So you had said a little bit about getting into the whole distilling thing. What did you do before all of this, before whiskey? Why whiskey, right?
So, like most Scottish people, were brought up with whiskey. So, 141, well, a few less now, active distilleries in Scotland. Where if you combined all the Colorado distilleries together, it might produce the same as one of the smallest in Scotland. Mm-hmm. So we all had friends who were working in the distillery industry. And I, first of all, straight out of school, joined the military. And I was in the military for 10 years. Came out of that, went into business. It was mainly fuel distribution and various other businesses within that. And I spent 15 years in that. So I had a lot of business experience. And then I sold the business unexpectedly in 2009. And I suggested to my new American wife, my first wife, that we could move to America because I had a 3-year non-compete in the industry, and within 9 months we were living in America. So it was that fast.
Okay.
So we'd come across, we viewed locations, we decided in Boulder. We then started getting my visas, blah blah blah, and within 9 months I was living here. So I arrived here in 2012, and I actually became a small investor in a gin company. One of the oldest distilleries in Colorado, established in 2007. And it took me 3 years to get my still because the demand for size copper pot stills was huge. Macallan's just ordered their 15, 16 stills not long after me.
Yeah.
And so it took 3 years. It came in. We started laying down whiskey. We've laid down whiskey now for 10 years, just coming up in March.
Wow.
So, and then Ted, who's the previous owner, used that opportunity to retire when the whiskey came online. But as I said, it was going to be a hobby. I think, my military, not so much, but certainly my business experience has helped me. And, I look back and I had a great time in both careers, but I really do enjoy making whiskey. And, as simple as it may seem to a lot of people, most people who are drinking, your listeners, have got a passion about it. I would even say it's more than just a hobby. I think
absolutely.
And that passion really shows and shines within the industry. So the people that I now meet, whether it be at our tasting room, whether it be at events, we've got a bond that really we can talk about things. And I love that. And that's something which I didn't have in my previous careers.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not making much money at it, but I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. So, I see this for another 60 next year. I see this going on for quite a while.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your service. And it does mean a lot to not only us, but the entire world. No matter who you serve for, if you're serving for the military, you are a blessed individual, because that is a extremely hard job and very taxing on your body and your mind and all of the things. So first of all, thank you so much. And then what's so funny is then you go into business type things, which I could see because it's very structured, right? There's a lot of structure with that. And coming from military, that's very structured. And then you go into this, and then you get into whiskey, and it's like, oh God, what happened? Yeah, it's chaos, which is really cool, because you're able to, with your knowledge, control that chaos and be like, I can only bet one of your best days is just walking through the rick house, and we can talk about the rick house if you want, walking through the rick house, dipping a sample, seeing if it's ready, going up to your office, responding to emails, coming back down, checking on stills, doing, like who wouldn't, as a whiskey nerd, as a whiskey lover, who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want that to be their job, right? Now, I know there is parts of whiskey making and whiskey production that suck. They just suck. Like getting your cola labels and all of the things that you got to do for that, and also getting distribution and stuff like that. Because one of the things I will say, I haven't seen Boulder Spirits very much in Texas, so it's one of those things where I'm like, I love you guys, but I can't get your product. And I know you do have we're going to talk about that at the end. You do have an online presence and stuff like that. And I feel like if COVID did anything good for us, and I've said this multiple times, if COVID did anything good for us, it made it much easier for a man like myself to procure a bottle of your whiskey through an online source, because those sources exploded. Now, were they ripping people off sometimes and, taking advantage of people? Probably. But at the same time, I think it might, after these past, it's been 6 years now. After these 6 years, we've kind of got all the kinks out, and I think everything seems to be running smoothing. We could talk about that if you'd like, but getting the whole point of having a distillery, other than making cool product, is getting whiskey to the lips of the consumer out there in the world. And so, like you were saying, going to events, doing all the things. And as you found out in that, the whiskey community is like, come on in, brother. Let's go. Let's, come on in. You're going to be fine. As long as you're very transparent, which I can see that you are. And as long as you're not trying to do what they're doing. You're not trying to be the big six out there. You're trying to do your thing and trying to do it well. And that's all we can ask for, because there are a lot of other distilleries that aren't even distilleries or whatever, but like they're doing things and they're kind of skirting the line on, this is kind of shady, and that's one of the things I don't want to promote, right? I don't want to promote somebody or a brand that's not fully transparent in everything they do, or is just, slapping a label on a bottle and saying this is ours, which I understand. I have nothing against non-distilling producers. I think they're doing really cool stuff, because what we've happened, and you can talk more on this, we have got into a whiskey glut where people made whiskey for way too long, and now we have an abundance of whiskey, but it doesn't fit the profile of, say, the Jim Beam Bottle and Bond, right? So it's way out of that profile, and it's not one of their special releases. So they sell it to private investors. I mean, that's only smart, right? So all these private investor groups pop up, and next thing you know, you have 72 NDPs on the thing with all the same barrels. So it's very intriguing for you as a craft distillery trying to do everything, and we can talk about this, everything grain to glass. That it's really intriguing, because you could have went out and just got a bunch of quote unquote Scotch from Scotland and made that, right?
Yeah. Well, what I was going to originally do, actually, when I came across waiting for my whiskey, was bring in whiskey from Scotland, brand it my name, but be very transparent in saying I'm sourcing this whiskey, exactly like Virginia Distillery did.
Absolutely.
And I think they did a great job at using that 4 or 5 years before the whiskey came online, to use it to build up that reputation. But in 2012, they changed the law to say that you had to bring all Scotch whiskey in bottles, not in totes. So the math didn't work out after that.
No.
But you touched on a couple of things there. So COVID did help us as far as online, but online purchasing is all over the place. You know, California now is able to do online within California, and they've got, I think it's they've got Arizona, Kentucky, they're allowed to trade within, unlike wine where they can 40 states, etc. Now, I don't think it's the be all and end all. I don't think we're going to, as a distilling industry, we're not going to, craft distillers aren't going to take bread out the mouth of the retailers, but it allows people to have access to our products. And the best way of doing that is to go on that distillery's website, because that distillery's website tends to be associated with a fulfillment partner out of Florida, California, DC, who will then send it. So, and most of them I've looked at, it's costing you the same as it would cost you in the store plus shipping, and shipping can be expensive. The other retailers are using it to, if it's available in that area, they'll get the local liquor store to deliver it. So, and I don't know where the charges, etc., go from that point. Yeah. But it's, you know, we do a little bit online, but not a huge amount. Like most of the Colorado distilleries, it's going to be supplementary. But what it allows us to do is to get somebody to taste our products if they want.
Right. And that's at the end of the day, that's what matters, because that's how a brand grows. You can talk about it. We can sit here and talk about your brand until we're blue in the face, but until somebody gets some of that whiskey and says, whoa, I need to try that. And of course, I'm going to sample this out to as many people as I can so that they can see what you guys are doing. And a couple of my buddies already know you guys very well. So I don't have to go there, but it's, and that, again, that goes back to the whiskey community part of it, right? Where we're just uplifting each other. You're doing a cool thing. I'm gonna make sure that everybody knows about you. And like I said early in the podcast when I first started having guests on, and I was very naive and young at this, and I didn't realize the actual effect that it had on the distillery that I was talking to as well. Even though I'm a very small show, it did have an effect on the distillery as well. And so, like, what it is it's a transactional relationship that you have with another person. And when they get a referral from somebody else from a totally different state or something like that, it means the world, because word of mouth marketing is the best marketing you can do. You can tell me it's not, you can buy all the likes and views you want online. It's never going to do as well as word of mouth. You do a cool thing, I'm going to tell my friend you do a cool thing. And I've been a plumber for over 25 years. I know this all too well. I can advertise on Google and Facebook and all of the things. It's not going to matter. If I go to your house and fix your problem and you refer me to your friend, that's all I need. That is cash money in the pocket right there. You know what I mean? And that to me means so much more. So I have been tried to be, and especially this year, coming into this year, because now with notoriety in the community, not only with yourself, but with myself, I get people reaching out to me as well. And I'm sure you get people reaching out to you all the time to sponsor or do this or whatever. I have to be very aware that, like, I promote a brand as well. And I don't want to just have every Tom, Dick, and Harry on here that, spouting whatever they want to say. Like, I want to have people that are doing it the right way and doing sharing the craft, you know what I mean? And I feel like you guys are doing this, and we're just one dram in. So I am about to open the American Single Malt. So if you want to tell us a little bit about this, obviously it's 100% malted barley, but and it's 46%, like it should be.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this one.
So this is, this was the part of the hobby I wanted to do originally. So we started laying down this single malt almost 10 years ago. So we had to really think carefully about, the still we were getting. The still that we've got will give a little bit more. The rules at the time is that new American Single Malt Whiskey, new charred oak barrels, because it came under the category of malt whiskey. But a lot of us, like you mentioned Deer Hammer, you mentioned Balcones, these guys were doing 100% malted barley in new charred oak barrels. So it was really important that we got a still that was going to be able to give a little bit of a heavier whiskey. Okay. A heavier whiskey, i.e. less reflux in the still. So for Sides Copper Pot still, every single still in Scotland and across the world will give a different flavour of whiskey because of that reflux in the still. And that's part of the story. So heavy whiskey, because it is going to go into a new charred oak barrel. And a new charred oak barrel, it's got to fight that new charred oak barrel. Bourbon guys will tell you, where is the sweet spot for bourbon before it starts getting a little oaky, a little bit tanniny, a bit leathery. So we were worried about that. And so lasting 10 years, and it's still great, was a huge plus for us because of that still. So the still, we do use more of a combination now of imported malted barley and local malted barley.
Okay.
Because, malted barley in the US isn't really used in whiskey. It tends to be used for beer. Right. So there's not that level of control and consistency unless you're Coors, where you've got the level of control and consistency over, but still it's really made for beer. Right. So we do a few single malt whiskies for local farmers who give us all their spare malt, and then we distill it for them. And then we bottle it for them for their brand. And there's a huge difference. This is a little bit more delicate. Malted barley in the US tends to give a bigger, earthier flavor with a little bit of a beer influence on the palate. So we bring our malted barley. We're first to bring in AB Mori yeast, which is 70% of all single malt whiskies in the world are made with AB Mori yeast. So dry yeast, we know what we're going to get from it. If you're a brewer, you use yeast to impart flavors. For distilling single malt, I didn't want to run that risk.
Yeah.
So we use AB Mori yeast. We use local water, Eldorado water, which is a local, and so does a lot of the distilleries here in Colorado. Use local wells, local mineraled water. Nothing bad, nothing too much. And the pot still, the shape of the pot still will give it a distinct flavor. And then we put it into the new charred oak barrels in the rick house. And I've been very pleased at the way the single malts progressed. Again, minimum 4 years on the single malt. 10 years, we're losing a lot to evaporation here in Colorado. Huge amounts.
Yeah.
In Colorado, we're losing 4% per annum to angel share, which is huge.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But a funny side of that is that's the first thing that happens, because we got those huge barometric swings, day, night, summer, winter. And that's the first impact Colorado gives it. The second impact is because it's so dry, it's sucking out those water particles at an alarming rate. So what happens is we'll put it in the barrel, anything between 110 and 120. Okay. Climb. So if it was at 120, which we did in the early days, it will climb on average to maybe 150 proof after 7 or 8 years. But we just got a barrel there that was at 166.6 proof.
Whoa.
53.3. ABV. And honestly, it tastes really good.
I'm sure it does.
It really does. That proof. So, the microclimate within Colorado, just like the microclimate in Texas, and you mentioned the Northwest, is going to have a distinct change in how the whiskey matures over the years. So that's our whiskey, and we do a few expressions of this. We've got our flagship that you've got. We've got our bottled and bond. We're just going to come out with a 10-year quite soon in March, April. And we've got a peated single malt whiskey, very lightly peated. It's really, 15 ppms if that, because we blend it down to have it more of an expression of peat than a peat bomb.
Right.
And then we play a lot with finishing. Not that we can do a great deal, maybe 2 or 3 barrels at a time, because it's more about the fun side of it and seeing what happens. So we've done a port, we've done a sherry, we've done an Armagnac, we've done a blend of the port, sherry, and Armagnac, and we just came out with a Muscatel.
Oh,
but again, just from the distillery. So if you come into the distillery, we've got them not online, unfortunately, but we just play around in maybe 600-700 bottles at a time, because malted barley plays really, really well with finishes. And I think there's bourbon traditionally hasn't had finished bourbons. We do a sherry finished bourbon. It's great. And I think part of that's the malted barley. But there's some distilleries in the US, and you probably know them better than I do, that are doing really good finished bourbons. Now there's quite a few bad ones, but the ones that are getting it right, are some of them are really, really good. Whether it be, I like the Angel's Envy, for example. I really like that. It's being able to play around with that in small cask formats or small batches.
Well, and because everybody needs to have a reason to go to the distillery, right? So the whole point of going to the distillery is to get that exclusive bottle, right? That bottle that maybe not everybody has, but it's a weird finish or it's a cask strength or a 160 proof or whatever you want to call it. That's what makes it so interesting and why it drives people to the distillery. So if you want to talk a little bit about the distillery, if you guys have a tasting room or anything like that, that way we can kind of showcase that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we've got a primary tasting room just about a mile east of Boulder. It's our production facility, about 10,000 square feet. We have our stills, we have our rack house there. We've got, we do our own bottling. We do everything from grain to glass. We've got a tasting room, which people can come in 6 days a week, 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, where there's always somebody there to talk through our whiskeys, give free tasting. You can sit in peace and quiet with a flight. We tend not to do a lot of cocktails because we want to really sort of accentuate the whiskeys, the sipping whiskeys. So, and we have a lot of private events there. And then we recently opened a secondary tasting room. In Colorado, we're allowed a secondary tasting room. Okay. And that's downtown on Pearl Street. Very small. We just do tastings and bottle sales there. And that's proved a real success because this is getting Boulder. I don't know if you know Boulder, but it's a huge amount of out-of-state visitors.
I can see that.
I would say half the people coming and buy a bottle are from out of state, which is fantastic for us because it's getting people. And you won't believe how many Texans are coming up.
I'm sure. We're trying to get out of the heat going up there where it's a little cooler.
My goodness, so many Texans. And they come up and, it's always that debate, carry-on luggage, checked luggage, can I take it? Can I get it? All that. And that's been we've had that open for about a year and it's really boosted our people are seeing us a lot more, especially from out of state. And we are distributed in about 15 states. Okay. To a lesser or greater extent, it depends, but we do have bottles on shelves. With the single malt, we actually were being pretty successful in Canada, South Africa, and Europe until the tariffs and various uncertainties.
Exactly.
Because there is an understanding of single malt whiskey in those countries.
Right.
whereas Americans tend to be on the bourbon side. Those other countries tend to be on the American single malt side a little bit. So we've had success at that. But you can buy almost all of our products online. Just go to our website, buy online. The only additional cost is going to be, like everybody else, the shipping cost.
Shipping, absolutely. Yeah. So you guys have done multiple collaborations with Lost Lantern. Is that correct?
Yes, we have.
So tell us a little bit about that. Lost Lantern, they're an amazing group. They're an independent body. If you don't know, guys, come on. Like, what do? You live under a rock, I guess. They're an independent bottling company, and they really showcase the distillery, and they showcase that specific cask and just what it brings to you. And I think I have a sample back here, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's right here. I'm not lying. Boulder Spirits, 8-year, 51 corn, 44, just like we're drinking, 75.5% alcohol.
Well, Adam and Nora are the husband and wife who run it, as you probably know.
Yeah.
And they're special people. I mean, they go around the US and select the barrels that they want. They've just selected 2 barrels from us that we sent, in fact, at the end of last year. And they're spreading their gospel, as it were. They tend to do a lot of collaborations, cask strengths. But what's great about the private bottler, which is really different from a lot of others, is they showcase the distillery. So we'll say Boulder Spirits. So people, when they purchase, because I think they're now distributed a little bit as well as
they are,
purchasing online, they showcase the distillery. Single Cask Nation does as well.
Absolutely.
The distillery. And we've done some barrel selects. They've taken some barrel selects from us as well. I don't think it's been launched yet. So those are the people who the distilleries want to do business with, because they help mutual promotion of the distillery, but their brand as well. I mean, I've sold a few barrels to people who private bottle, and my name doesn't appear on it. And I try and avoid that the best I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, but no, the Lost Lantern I love those guys.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is, they want you to see the regionality of it as well. Like we were talking about earlier, like they have their new Discovery Club where they're trying to get whiskeys from every 50 states, and it's so cool because, like, me as a whiskey nerd, as a whiskey geek, I'm like, yes, I want to know what the bourbon tastes like in Maine. I want to know what it tastes like in Colorado, California, all the places, because it is inherently different. And that's, I don't know. I just keep harping on that whiskey community, but it's not just for the ones listening to the show or the ones, or me personally. It's actually for you too, which is really cool, because the fact that the actual producer of the said whiskey gets a little fire under him to be like, oh, I'd rather watch what I'm doing because these guys are watching me. These guys are watching everything I'm doing with bated breath, because we want to see the new release. We want to see the new thing you have. So it keeps you, and this is like some chat GPT words right here, it keeps you innovating, right? It keeps you doing things a little bit different than everybody else, so that you can catch attention. Because as you well know, shelf space, there are so many bottles out there right now that it's hard, right? It's hard to get shelf space when there's 7,000 SKUs of whiskey out there, and somebody looks at a pretty label. That's all they're going to see is a pretty label, and they don't really know what's inside it. So it's hard to compete for shelf space. So when you have a whiskey community behind you and these people promoting you, it just makes it so much easier for that to happen. And somebody like Lost Lantern that is showcasing it, and people that trust Adam and Nora's palate will say, okay, if they say it's good, I think I'm going to like it as well. And I can guarantee you, and I mean, there's been, I think, one that I was like, that's a little weird for me, but then it grew on me, and I was like, okay, I get where they're going from. This is not your typical whatever it was, right? Yeah. And so that's what makes it so cool about dipping into other markets. And like Single Cask Nation, they do, they're personally aligned with this, SMWS. So it's like, that's a whole nother market right there, where, where you're able to reach people that you wouldn't have in the past. So that to me is really intriguing. So let's talk a little bit about, do you create any other spirits, like maybe a rye whiskey or gin, vodka? You had said something about gin earlier. Gin, vodka, liqueurs, poutine, eau de vie. What are we doing?
So, it's funny because, there's an old saying, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, amen.
And it's unfortunate that, it's fortunate distillers can normally make most things.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to focus on something. So when I joined the company or became a small investor in the company, we have got some phenomenal gins. We've got a pink gin. We've got our flagship gin with a beautiful range of botanicals. We've got a barrel aged gin that is just spectacular. However, it's very difficult. And we've got a vodka, but we don't talk about vodka. And we got a coffee liqueur and a pumpkin cordial. But what's really difficult is there's 50 people doing that just in Colorado. So to get on the shelves is way more effort, and it's difficult. So we've sort of taken a back seat to that and really just promoted the whiskeys. Now we have the gins and vodkas, etc.
Right.
And but we've taken a little bit backseat promoting those. We can do most distilleries can do most things.
Right.
We source the grain neutral spirit for our gin and vodka.
Okay.
And the reason we do that is because our pot still can't get up to that proof.
Right.
So, but we redistill with the botanicals in the pot still when we're making our gin.
Oh, I got you.
But again, we're transparent about that. And it's not a big part of our business. It was initially, but really we're focusing on the whiskeys. And we did do an agave spirit, which was phenomenal. But you're competing against tequila, the name tequila.
Yeah.
So very, very difficult to do. But we play around with other things as well.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of keeps it alive, right? Because here's the thing. At the end of the day, as much as you don't want to say it and I don't want to say it, whiskey turns into a job after a minute. You're in there running the still, you're doing the thing. Not every day is going checking a barrel, writing an email, and go and play with the still. It's some days your hoses break and there's whiskey flowing all over the floor and your barrel is empty. It doesn't have any whiskey in it anymore. And some days are work. And so you got to have these other little pet projects, kind of like your finishing spirits and stuff like that, but then also having something else that you do where mainly it's going to be for the the tasting room or maybe a few stores around the area, but it's not really your bread and butter, right? You're not sitting there putting, signing banknotes over that one. Whereas with the whiskeys, those are going to be the tried and true things that have really stood the test of time. If we think about it, I mean, if whiskey can make it through a prohibition, think about that. If whiskey can make it through no alcohol for 8 years, 6 years, whatever it was, if we can make it through that and still be making whiskey as good as we were, okay, maybe even better, some would say. I mean, it wasn't that bathtub whiskey we were drinking back in the day, which I've heard that pre-prohibition whiskey was really good, and they didn't stick to a normal recipe like you would say. A lot of them had botanicals and stuff in their whiskey as well, but that's a totally different podcast. But like in Scotland, they would use a lot of the heather, right, to balance out their whiskeys as well, which is super cool. Okay, moving on. So let's talk a little bit about the future, right? Because obviously, like I said earlier, we are kind of in a whiskey glut, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't want to be the Debbie Downer of the conversation, but there's a lot of whiskey out there on the shelves. So you, as not only the boss, but also fully invested in this company, how do you see it in the next, and I know this is seeing if we're gonna how we're gonna make it through this, but where do you see this going? Where do you see Boulder in say 5 to 10 years?
I think we made a few changes to our distillery at the beginning of last year.
Okay.
You know, whether it be just pulling back in a few things, focusing on certain things, picking up other work. For example, we private bottle first for a couple of brands.
Okay.
So we picked up some work that's going to help us through those times. And best guess, I think this is going to still carry on for the next 3 years. I know within Colorado, there's a few people who are on their knees. They're about to pack it in. It's happened last year to 5 or 6. It's going to happen this year. And there's going to, and unfortunately, some of those people have been in it for a long time.
Yeah.
And you don't know their circumstances. It could be, borrowing. They could just decide, that's it. I'm not making enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something else. They might have investors that are banging the door. But we're in a position where we can ride this out for the next 3 years. Okay. And we'll carry on. Actually, this year was our best year as far as revenue is concerned. Maybe not profit, but revenue. Revenue. So it was a good year for us. So next year, we're hoping just to stay there for the next 2-3 years, because it will sort itself out. And we're living in uncertain times. When people are uncertain, they just, instead of buying the $60 bottle, they'll buy the $50 bottle. Instead of, buying those shoes, they'll buy these shoes. So that's happening throughout our economy at the moment. People are uncertain. That may change. It will change. I would say 3 years. I certainly know a lot of people. I know a lot of people that are literally going to take any amount of money for their barrels, trying to sell them on because they've got cash flow, they've got payroll to pay. So they're selling their barrels on. So things are moving. And I hope there's been some, big guys have fallen. I hope we're seeing the end of it, but I don't think so till the end of this year.
Right.
And I think it's going to have a washout a little bit.
Right. Well, and like you say, it's very uncertain because, there could be one write-up by, an influencer, like, I hate to say his name, like Fred Minnick or somebody like that. And next thing you know, your distillery is booming and or Whiskey Advocate says that you have the best whiskey in the world. And next thing you know, you can't find it anywhere. You can't make enough. Has there been an issue with, as well, because since there has been a little lux in that, I know me personally in my business, it's been a good time. It's been good. Like, I've been steadily busy. But has there been an issue with getting bottles? And because I've heard from other people that buying bottles and even like packaging equipment and stuff like that. Is there any issue with that? Like getting it to where you can do your job, I guess. I
think most of the companies, because when things start, when especially distilleries, if they're reading that distilleries are struggling or breweries are struggling, they start the suppliers start tightening the screw a little bit. Upfront payments, minimum orders, those kind of things. And also they're trying to sort out their supply chain. Right. So it's longer wait times. It's not just in time. I want a pallet of glass tomorrow. It's minimum orders 5 pallets. If you want that price, then it's going to be 8 weeks. That kind of thing. So that's also going to have pressure on the people, the distilleries that are struggling on the cash flow side. So I think that's going to be another factor. Now, again, that'll wash out in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Getting bottles is fine. Getting packaging is fine. We don't have getting grains. There was a time that you couldn't get a barrel. Right. Now they're selling them off dirt cheap to you. It's just that ebbs and flows.
Yeah. And like anything, right? As we say, this too shall pass, right? It will eventually pass. And I mean, yes. Do we want these distilleries to close down? Absolutely not. I want everybody out there making fantastic spirits, doing their thing, right? I hate to see a distillery like a local-ish distillery to me, Devil's River. They're right on the Riverwalk in San Antonio. It's a beautiful facility. They did Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which doesn't mean they're closed. It just means restructuring. I know that Westward had some issues as well. Like there's a lot of things going on. A lot of, like you're saying, the screws being tightened a little bit, and everybody's having to pull back where they can. And I think if they just pull back where they can, and if it's not so much that they're pulling everything back and it lets loose, I think we can I'm putting myself in this because obviously I'm prospering off of everybody else prospering, right? I think we will get through this. And here's the thing, I'm going to say the need, but it's not the want. The want for whiskey is still there, right? The want for whiskey is still there. And but I think what is happening is the consumer themselves is more educated now, because I'm not going to pay $30 for a crappy bottle of whiskey. I would rather pay $60 for a cool craft bottle of whiskey that tastes amazing. I think that's what's going to happen if it hasn't already happened. Yes, there are still those people out there that buy the Buffalo Traces and the things and do the things, right? But I think the informed consumer is going to be like, I don't need 20 MGPs on the shelf. What I need is cool craft distilleries, because for one, it's supporting craft and it's supporting local-ish, right? I like to support everybody around me, right? I don't care if it's a restaurant or the bug man, whoever it is, support somebody local. I think people are getting more back to that, to where they're like, hey, if I mom and pop, as we used to say, support that local mom and pop. And it really shows, because like when you go to a mom and pop restaurant, it tastes way better than IHOP, doesn't it? Like it just does. I'm sorry. Right. And craft whiskey, to me, and this is a personal opinion, and take that for what it is, I feel like it tastes better than some of what the big guys are doing. Obviously, they're doing a thing and people love it and they sell millions of cases every day, and let them do that. But we're going to focus on this, and we're going to focus on doing what we can with what we have and trying to produce the best product we can, not only for you, but for me as well. Right. Yeah. So as a consumer and as somebody who's in the industry from this side of it, it does make me feel a way when I hear people that have came on the podcast no longer work with the distilleries anymore and stuff like that. It does hurt my heart, because like I want everybody to prosper, right? A rising tide raises all boats, right? But at the same time, like things have to happen. And unfortunately, when you're in this industry, and not just this industry, let's be honest, when you're living life is unfair. I mean, you can look back at some of my older podcasts and it'll tell you how unfair life is, like it is not, this is not a easy game to play. And when you're dealing with a commodity that isn't a necessity as well, like you don't need whiskey, right? Like it's something you want. It's luxury. When you're dealing with a luxury item, it's easy for people to push that away, but it's also easy for people to say, hey, I'll spend a little bit more to get something cool. Yeah, thoughts?
No, you're spot on. And here in Boulder, we've got a lot of local businesses, as most towns have. And, we don't want them to shut down and only have IHOP remaining. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. If you just if you don't support the locals, you're only going to have IHOP at the end of the day, and then you would bloody complain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, no, absolutely. And I love what I'm doing. I love creating things. I like speaking to people who enjoy my whiskey and taking constructive criticism. The thing with whiskey, though, is there's a whiskey for everybody. I'd rather somebody tell me, no, I absolutely don't like that peated whiskey, or I absolutely love that peated whiskey, mm-hmm. rather than this or that. So I do a lot of the tours and a lot of the talks, and I see the faces of the people who are tasting it. And it's always when you get to peated malt, it's always a divisive.
It is. It is for sure. It is.
And I love that. And that's one of the most enjoyable parts of mm-hmm. what I do. And creating other things. You are in a bit of the lap of the gods, as it were, how it turns out sometimes.
Yep.
You can only do so much blending, but no, I love what we're doing, and it's and I think a lot of people in the craft industry. I mean, you mentioned Deerhammer, for example. Mm-hmm. I mean, Lenny, he was a graphic designer.
Yeah.
For his time. So and then a brewer, and then he went and made whiskey. Most of the people in the industry, in the spirits industry, most of the craft in the craft spirits industry have had all sorts of jobs before. I mean, I was speaking to Colin Keegan from Santa Fe. He was an architect.
Yes.
I mean, how the hell did you get to making whiskey? And I love that about the industry.
Absolutely. You are 100% correct. It brings people from all over what's in the glass. And that to me is the linchpin of the whiskey community, right? It brings, no matter who you are, no matter your social status, no matter anything, we can share a dram together. It's well worth it. I don't care. I don't care if it is that bottom shelf Jim Beam, right? I would prefer it to be a Boulder Spirit, obviously, since we're talking Boulder Spirit. But at the same time, like, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's not really so much even about the whiskey. It's about that community and building up those relationships that you get to have together. And it's so cool. Okay. We talked about something very quickly. And if you can't talk about it, I get it. We talked about something very quickly off camera that I wanted to bring up because you said not everybody's into peated whiskey. You told me a little secret that you guys are potentially working on a heavily peated whiskey.
So when peated whiskey divides people, and I wanted to make a whiskey that was more of an expression of peat, but it's difficult to get an expression of peat because it's either peated or it's not peated. And even though we're down at say 15 ppms, it's still absolutely there. Right. And one of the great joys is the fact that a lot of people, especially Americans, have not ever tasted peated whiskey before. And when they taste it for the first time, as I said, they either love it or they hate it. It's a bit like mezcal tequila, that kind of balance. And I love, because so many people in their 50s or 60s have discovered something that they absolutely love. Now, what I did say to you, so we do distilling. I've got other Scottish friends who do their own brands. And but they come in and distill in my still. Okay. So I've got one chap from Hogback Distillery who makes heavily peated. When I say heavily, not an octomore, but 60 ppms. So he brings his malted barley in, and right at the moment he's using my still. He uses his own yeast. He does his own cuts. Doesn't even need supervised. We work with him because it's our distillery. But he's making, I think he's doing about 50 barrels of heavily peated Scottish malt. And the great thing about peated malt, when it goes into a new charred oak barrel, now I know under the new rules you can put it in second fill barrel, is I think it does a couple of things. It covers up a little bit of that oakiness from the oak barrel, but what it does is it accentuates sweetness. So there's almost a sweet peat notes to peated malt whiskey going into a new oak barrel, because people time and time again say, I love this, and it's a little bit sweeter than if they'd had a Lafroig or a Lenny or something like that, which is a real fun addition that the new oak barrels give it, that sweet peat. I don't know if it gives the sweetness when you get right up high on the ppms, but certainly on the lower side. So that the distillery is absolutely stinking of bog, at the moment. Peat bogs at the moment.
That's what it's all about, though, right? You walk in there and you're like, oh Lord, it stinks in here. So good. It smells so good, right? It's one of those things. So no, that to me is really cool that you just let people go ahead. We're not using, I mean, because I'm guessing you don't run 24/7, right? You're running when you need to make the whiskey you need to and barrel it and then go on to other things.
Yes. So we like a lot of the distilleries, you sell your product. We're now in a sort of cycle where you sell your product, you make the money, you buy the grain, and then you distill. And Graham, who's distilling at the moment, or we're distilling for him, but he's there. We'll transfer and bond out to him, and then he'll bottle it himself under his own brand. But he's very transparent, right? Where he says he makes it, but it's him that's doing the work. So no, we're going to be doing probably coming up in this, just after, before the summer, about 100 barrels, and we'll lay down 100 barrels this year. But we've slowed down a bit because we've got enough whiskey on our current sales graph to have an average age at 6-7 years, and then have something else a bit older than that. So like everybody else, so we're just pulling back, a little bit of cash flow discipline, without running out of that age level. So I'd love to be distilling every day.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously that would be a thing, but then you have to think about, where am I going to put all these barrels? Then you got to build another rick house. Then you got to do, and so it turns into like, you just keep feeding the monster, right? At that point, you're like, okay, now I need a bigger still. Now I need, like all of the things just keep happening and happening. And then eventually you're like, okay, now we're sitting on 20, 50, 80,000 barrels and none of them are ready and we don't have an order in. So now what?
Exactly. And that's where people are, the investors and the private investors in Kentucky, suddenly they're not getting the price they want, but also they still got to pay storage, use tax down in Kentucky because Kentucky taxes them.
Yep.
And then they've got to pay for insurance.
Yeah.
So those things are eating into that declining asset.
Yeah.
And that's why so many are trying to get out of it at the moment.
Yep.
And that's,
But at the same time, does that give you the slightest bit of hope for craft distilling? That even the big guys are feeling it?
The big guys have got, the big guys are always on that hunt, lay down more whiskey, grow. Mm-hmm. Most craft distilleries don't have that mentality.
Right.
We're about working within our budget, working within what we can afford to do.
Right.
A small craft distillery, let's just say, a small craft distillery isn't getting $1 million loans to run their production and build their barrels. Those guys can't. Big guys can, and they'll run their production. But most of us are just holding back a bit and watching what happens. The big guys, Diageo have made some major changes.
Absolutely.
In the way that they're operating.
Mm-hmm.
So with distill, with all these things, so they've got a bigger problem than the craft distillers have. Mm-hmm. If the craft distilleries don't owe a lot of money, they can weather the storm for 2 or 3 years, then I think we're a portion of us are going to be all right.
Well, and what that'll do, obviously that whiskey is sitting there and it's waiting. In 2 years, let's say it's 2 years, that whiskey's only going to be better, right? You're going to have older stock, you're going to have well-aged stock, you're going to have, all of the things that the most whiskey people, I know, and as well, that age is just a number, right? But it does mean something, right? The maturity in a barrel does mean something. Obviously, at that point, you're like, we got to get these barrels out because we got to make payroll next week. But at the same time, like if you can wait it out enough to get to the other side of this, or even the downturn a little bit of it, you could take a little breath and say, okay, we've got orders coming in. We've got, this, fire it up. Let's go again, and I think it's, it's similar to what we do on the blue, I'm going to say blue collar side, but you know what I mean? Where it's like that living paycheck to paycheck. We got enough for next week. Let's keep going, let's just keep the fire burning. Like I was saying, we had a snowstorm, or not a snowstorm, an ice storm here recently. And my wife we have a wood stove in our house. She didn't want to put the wood stove on because she's like, well, we're going to run out of wood, and then we're going to be stuck, because we were stuck in the house for 3.5 days.
Oh, wow.
And so she didn't want to do it. So of course, we don't have gas in our house. So our electric heat pump furnace was just sitting there the whole time, because it's 8 degrees outside. What can it do? It's trying to heat this big house up, and it can't do it. So it's funny, but then when we were past that and the sun came out and it started melting and all the things, and that night was cool, my wife goes, why don't you put a fire on? And I think, and that's a good metaphor for what I'm getting into. I think that's what's going to happen on this downturn of the whiskey, right? Of the whiskey glut. I think it's going to be like, hey, why don't we go get a bottle? Why don't we go to Boulder and check out what they got going on over there? Now, fortunately, we're going to have to wait it out, and we're going to have to see what happens. But that's why you coming on the show means so much, is because it can get your name out there to people that might not have heard of it. Now, it might not be a lot, but it will be enough people to where, hey, if somebody purchases a bottle online, you know what? That was able to put fuel in the car, like that. Let's just keep the lights on until we're able to rock and roll again. And I don't want to be doom and gloom about it. Whiskey's doing great. Everything is fine. We're going to be okay. Like you said, there are going to be some people that were probably, they didn't want to say it, but they were probably in the book struggling a little bit to begin with. So it's one of those things. Like I'll tell you this, and then I'll let you go. Me being a plumber by trade, one of the things that they tell you in plumbing school, you don't go to school, like it's hands-on, right? So I learned how to do plumbing. Well, I didn't learn how to be a bookkeeper. I didn't learn how to be a CPA. I didn't learn how to do taxes. I didn't learn any of that stuff. I learned how to put this pipe to this pipe and make it not leak, right? So when you open your own business, you're like, oh, they want money from me for nothing, for this, what? Like they need this, they need that. So it's the whole thing of like just learning your craft, but then also you have to learn everything else around it. And I think if we as craft whiskey lovers just say, okay, we need to support local, we need to support craft, because that's what's in our neighborhood, and that's what needs us. These big guys, they're going to be okay. They got multi-billion-dollar loans, they're fine. Diageo even shut down production at Balcones for about 6 months. So like they're feeling it, right? So I get it, but at the same time, like that's even more fire under us. If you got an extra $50, go buy a bottle, just go support these people that are trying their hardest to produce great craft whiskey. And I can't thank you, Alastair, enough for coming on here and hanging out with me. And I didn't even give you tasting notes on the single malt, but it's absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to sit down with it and just pine over it. I am going to do a review on one of these bottles on my YouTube as well, so be looking forward to that, guys. But it'll be the American Single Malt. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be the American Single Malt, because that's what I go towards. Even though let me not say the bourbon was absolutely fantastic. It was unlike any bourbon that I've had, which is great. I like I'm not going to say obscure, but I like the little differences that it has compared to some of the more Kentucky style bourbons, which to me, that really sings to my heart. So I can't thank you enough for coming on here. Why don't you tell us about your website, any other social media or whatever you want to promote? I will have it all linked down below, but if you want to promote it, go ahead.
We've been a bit lax on our social media, but we're still there on Boulder Spirits and on Instagram and Facebook. But the big one is going to our website, where you can see all the notes and all the spirits, but also able to we do a pickup from the distillery. But more importantly, we've got a retail partner in Florida who mails it out, fulfills the orders. And as I said, the additional cost is always going to be the shipping rather than the actual bottle.
Right.
So yeah, and check it out. And also, if anybody's ever in Boulder, we do tours. They can be booked online, or just come in and chat to us and have a couple of free samples. We're always wanting to talk to people and show people what we have here in Boulder. And Boulder's a nice place to visit if you're in Colorado.
Absolutely. I mean, why not? If you're like just hanging around in Colorado, why not go to a cool distillery and try some of their spirits, pick up a bottle? Don't worry. Just like get one of those bags from, I think they sell them on Amazon. You check a bag and you can put all your little bottles in there. It'll be fine. You'll be fine. I promise. Do not try and put it on your carry-on bag. They will take it from you. That happened to me. I went to New Jersey one time, and I went to this local distillery. It was right down the road in New Jersey. I couldn't even tell you what it was at this point. I bought a bottle from them, and I was like, man, this is gonna be so much fun when I get home. They got me for it. I was a little younger lad back then, but they got me for it, and they were like, what's this? And I'm like, it's a bottle of whiskey. They're like, you can't carry that on a plane. I'm like, so you're gonna stow it underneath the plane, and that's okay. Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense anyway. But I can't thank you enough for hanging out with me tonight. It's been a lot of fun. And guys, I will have all of their links and stuff down below for you guys to check out. And yeah, make sure you try craft whiskey. Make sure you're out there, supporting local, especially local to you, and also local craft distilleries, and just get to some of these regions that we've talked about on this show. Get to some of these regions that they don't just need your help, but they need your support. And I think if we support craft whiskey in itself, I think it'll uplift it as well. All right. I thank you very much.
Nando.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. Y'all be good. And until next time, be blessed. Peace.